Are you trying to establish your brand as a thought leader? Start a podcast, invite industry experts to be guests on your show, and watch your brand become the prime resource for decision makers in your industry. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Alan Knitowski. He is the CEO and co-founder at Phunware. Alan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me to your show.
I'm really excited to chat with you today, Alan. We're going to be talking about specifically three problems that brands are solving with location data. But before we get into that, I would love for our audience to understand kind of why you're the guy to be talking about this. Could you explain what you and your team are up to at Phunware, Alan?
Yeah, so Phunware is a really interesting company. It's basically like the entire mobile ecosystem in one company. That was a bit ambitious when we started, but the goal was to index a list of Phunware IDs for every connected device touching a network worldwide. And much like you've watched Facebook build an empire with 5 applications, Phunware really is doing the same thing across more than 5,000 application portfolios, predominantly for the Fortune 5,000. So we specialize in what we call application lifecycle management. And that includes all of the applications that represent Fortune 5000 brands and their identity on mobile. It includes all of the aspects of media that go into building, engaging, and monetizing audiences, both indoors and out, and the data sets that go with them, so that you can do not only one-to-one real-time indoor-outdoor targeting, but more importantly, it allows people to make smarter decisions on future releases of applications and better ways to engage and monetize their audiences.
Got it. I love it. So Alan, I want to spend the rest of our time together today talking about these three problems that brands are solving with location data. We're going to get into those three specific ones, but can you kind of speak to this idea at a high level, just so listeners can really understand kind of holistically what we're going to be talking about, and then I want to dive specifically into each one of these three.
Yeah, no problem at all. So most of us are all familiar with location from when we use maps like Apple Maps or Google Maps outside, and we typically use GPS technology to give you that blue dot of showing you where you're at on a map, whether it's in your car or on your phone. So what happened in that world was kind of longitude and latitude, where you had an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. But once you go indoors, GPS tends to not be very useful. And you need to transition off of GPS into either higher low density Wi-Fi, which represent the wireless networks typically indoors, or physical or virtual beacons. And what you're really trying to do is transition from 2 dimensions of longitude and latitude to get indoors and have 3 dimensions, where you have an X, a Y, and a Z coordinate. So it's not just a blue dot on a building, but you know if you're in the 25th floor or a certain conference room. And what you're doing is getting progressively more and more granular on the targeting. Outside, you can get within a certain number of meters, from several hundred meters to several thousand meters through GPS. Once you get indoors with Wi-Fi, you can probably get down to 3, 5, or 7 meters. And when you're using beacons, you can literally get down to 1 meter or less. And that becomes critical to have the context of where people are at, what they like, what they're doing. And it's important to understand the hardware side and the bandwidth side of the issue as much as the experience you create within applications to engage, manage, and monetize users. So if you think of all this stuff talked about, the Internet of Things, that's really the hardware. It's the sensors, the chips that go in the devices touching a network, the networking gear, and the network itself. All that hardware would usually be what we would call IoT, or the Internet of Things. And what Phunware really does is specialize in what I would call the software of things, which is all the software and the applications you're using to take advantage of all those sensors, all those chips, all those devices, all that networking gear, and all those networks to really engage on a one-to-one basis indoors and outdoors based on all the characteristics of the people that are using and interacting with brands in the virtual or physical world.
Okay, so Alan, this first problem that brands are solving with location data is indoor wayfinding. Can you talk to us about this a little bit?
Sure. So in order for you to have the same experience when you're inside a building as you do when you're outside using GPS for Apple or Google Maps, you really need to have sub 1 second updates or refreshes to get what you would call true blue dot indoor positioning. It's quite easy to get what we call proximity triggers. For instance, you're in Las Vegas and you're going to walk into the Bellagio as a casino. You can have certain triggers that are granular enough, even if they're updating every 30, 40, 50 seconds, to understand that you and your device walk through the front door of the Bellagio and it could trigger a message that says, "Welcome to the Bellagio." But if you really are trying to figure out once you walk into the Bellagio how to get to the poker room or how to get to the spa or how to get to certain parts of the hotel that you're unfamiliar with, you really need to be able to do indoor mapping, navigation, wayfinding in the same way that you do outside. When you deal with Wi-Fi networks, the most advanced Wi-Fi networks in the world right now will only get you about 10-second refresh rates on the updates in terms of your phone or your tablet pinging the wireless access points and then getting updated information to be able to give you your location. And so what you've seen to offset that challenge is the addition of either physical beacons, which you put a battery in and you could put on a wall or under a desk or in a spot, and those will update sub 1 second. Or you can use what are called virtual beacons, which you tend to have one virtual beacon per wireless access point, and those will update, call it every 3 to 5 seconds. So in the Phunware world, we created a lot of software to take advantage of the physical network infrastructure if there's hardware available. We also look to see what kind of network bandwidth and availability is there, or if there's absolutely none whatsoever, and try to figure out the best way to help people get from point A to point B, even if all the networks and the hardware fails. The use case of something like that would be your grandmother is in the basement of a hospital. She needs to get to the 4th floor for an x-ray and get grandma from point A to point B, even when there's no bandwidth, there's no network, and there's no hardware. And what we do at Phunware is to try to help brands to be able to take advantage of whatever might or might not be available and still help grandma get turn-by-turn directions to get from point A to point B so that her patient experience at that healthcare facility is better than it would be without such help.
So moving beyond indoor wayfinding, Alan, this second problem that is being solved is asset and personnel tracking. Can you talk to us about this one?
Sure. So if you think about, in the old world, how did you actually do things to either focus on safety or protection of resources, whether those were people or property? Take an example at a mine. Often you would see in the old days, someone would literally, sound a horn before the explosion of the dynamite or the C4 or some kind of explosion happened to be able to obviously get access to minerals or commodities inside mines. Well, that works pretty well if you can hear, but if you're actually in a spot where you can't hear or you're hearing impaired, sounding a horn is not going to help protect anyone. And so what we're now using geofences and location to do is to ensure that within the blast radius, as an example, you can actually make sure that you have no equipment that was left behind or people that are still in a dangerous area before somebody is going to have that explosion go off. And if you get out of something that extreme into healthcare, what you're trying to do is to make sure you get the right patient with the right doctor and the right nurse in the right room at the right time with the right equipment. Because each hospital in the United States loses about $8 million per hospital per year on scheduling. Not only does 1 in 4 of us miss our appointments that we've scheduled for medical care, but if you don't align the room, the equipment, the staff, and the patients at the right place and the right time, then the hospital loses the revenue. They can't invoice Medicaid or Medicare or any sort of insurance, and that costs them revenue, And meanwhile, it affects people who are desperately trying to get those appointments or may have needed the appointment and they missed them because of the complexity of trying to get from your home to the parking garage onto the medical campus and to get to the right room or the right wing at the right time. So what geofences can do and what sensors in the real world can do is you can know whether that x-ray machine is in the appropriate spot or whether the saline drip is in the appropriate spot and so forth, and whether the doctor or the nurse are at the right place when they're supposed to be when you as a patient are there. So what you're seeing is taking all these sensors and all this information across all these devices, and you're using it to facilitate the workflow to get people from point A to point B or multiple parties from point A to point B. You're also providing reminders or alerts to the staff if the right equipment aren't in the room. So when everyone else gets there, from the doctors, the nurses, and the patients, they still need to have the right equipment or they can't provide the appropriate care. And so those are another thing where you're actually using all the different information you have available for people, places, and things, and you're trying to unify those under workflow or policy enforcement so that you can ensure that you're getting everything just right and maximizing your ability to provide that care to be able to make it a better experience for the patient on one side and more economical for the hospital on the other.
Got it. Okay, Alan, so this next one, we're going to be talking about location-based engagement and marketing. And for the B2B marketer that is listening to this, talk to us more about this location-based engagement and marketing, because I think this one's going to be really, really impactful for our audience.
Sure, and I think that the only thing that anyone who's a marketer should ever care about in the world, a chief revenue officer, a vice president, P&L owner, whether you had digital or mobile or whether you're running marketing or sales, the reality is everyone wants to have a one-to-one indoor-outdoor relationship with every one of their potential consumers. They want to engage them before they arrive at a facility, while they're on site at a facility, after they've left. They also want to capture more information about everywhere that they've met or seen them anywhere in the world. So for the same reason you think of the scale of Google or Facebook being very attractive to marketers and advertisers, Phunware is similarly positioned to be like that, because through over 5,000 application portfolios for the largest live events in the world, the largest flagship applications in the world, thousands and thousands of physical locations in the world, what we've been able to assemble is more than 2 billion Phunware IDs against more than 700 million monthly active users. And what that allows us to do, as you might imagine, is to understand who you are, where you're at, what you like, what you don't, what you're doing, the behavior and context of what's happening indoors or out, and your value in real time to that brand. Because as we know, often 20% of the customers for most brands represent 80% of their revenue, whether that's at Home Depot, whether that's at Starbucks, or anywhere in between. And what we believe is that the most important type of one-to-one targeting is real-time marketing automation, which represents over half of the SaaS revenue in the world. But most marketing automation we're all familiar with come from companies like Salesforce with ExactTarget or Pardot, or Oracle through Responsys or Eloqua, or any of the other ones like Marketo or Constant Contact. But the reality is those engagements tend to be from legacy internet systems where the software was designed to send out email, which now most people view as spam. Those email engagements tend to have 1% to 2% open rates and then very small conversion rates after that. In the world that we operate, mobile marketing automation on a one-to-one basis indoors and outdoors across everything we see going on around the world to the tune of 1.3 trillion database events. What it allows us to do is it allows us to dramatically improve the conversion and yield, because even if you're a retailer with 30 million downloads of your branded application portfolio, that wouldn't even represent 5% of what Phunware sees on a monthly basis. So if you're a marketer and you can connect your big data sets down to your granular segments and demographics for targeting directly into Phunware, we can help you get even more granular and refine those targets on a one-to-one basis such that you get dramatically improved conversion and yield of your digital engagements, your offers, your advertisement and marketing. And what we've seen is our open rates with mobile marketing automation exceed 90%, not 1% to 2%. And the reason why is it's like a bubble that looks like a text message, and everybody is trained to actually eliminate all the open messages on the bubbles through all their apps. So when you get over 90% open rates as a digital stimulus, then we see the conversion at retail from 18 to 40%, depending on the campaigns and engagements, with full attribution at retail point of sale. And that is obscene in terms of the conversion. Using an example, using something called geo-conquesting. This would be the equivalent of one retailer having their audience download their own application and having geofences that they put around all of their stores across the country. That helps them engage before, during, and after visits to their stores, but geo-conquesting allows you to actually put geofences around your 7 largest competitors in all of their stores throughout the United States. So if you have that retailer see, through what amounts to a global real-time focus group, all of their application users, and they happen to go to one of their competing retailers, instantly you can penetrate a geofence at a competitive store. You can give them an offer. It could be triple loyalty points or 50% off or some kind of incentive for the next 60 minutes. And that user will stop in their tracks, walk out of the store, get in their car, drive to the retailer that engaged them when they went into that competitive offering, and then they go in, buy the offer, and get full attribution at retail point of sale. And their competitor doesn't even know at all that that person was just engaged, left, and spent their money somewhere else.
Wow. That's fascinating, Alan. This has been super interesting to me. If there's somebody listening to this, Alan, and they want to connect deeper on this, or they want to understand this further, what's the best way for them to go about staying connected with you, as well as learning more about Phunware?
Sure. Well, obviously we have a website, www.phunware.com. That's Phunware. And we literally, for every single vertical, so whether you're in healthcare, or aviation, or media and entertainment, or sports, or anything else, we have specific segments of all the content that shows the kind of tool sets we can use if you're a do-it-yourselfer and build your own applications, or if you don't have the time, money, or inclination to figure out how to take ingredients like software development kits and application program interfaces to build your own branded portfolios. We have different options with vertical solutions that we can license off the shelf for one budget, and then we have as high-end as people want to go. And that's probably the best way to think about things. If you're trying to remember us, think of technology where there's hardware, there's software, there's firmware, and there's Phunware.
Got it. I love it. Alan, again, thank you so much for giving me part of your morning today. I think this is going to be really, really interesting for our listeners, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
To ensure that you never miss an episode of the B2B Growth Show, subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast player. This guarantees that every episode will get delivered directly to your device.
If you or someone you know would be an incredible guest for the B2B Growth Show, email me at jonathan@sweetfishmedia.com. Let us know. We love connecting with B2B executives, and we love sharing their wisdom and perspective with our audience.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.